I'm joined by Jenny. I'll let you introduce yourself, Jenny.
Thanks, Jesse. I'm Jenny Rushwa. I'm Head of Learning and Development at Sumo. I love that, Mark, now. So yeah, I worked at Sumo now. October 2019 I came in, there wasn't a learning and development function, so kind of came in to build the learning offering and the department.
Perfect. So let's get into it. So I guess we're all here today to talk about skills, and I think many of you on the session today were at Learning Technologies last week, and skills definitely felt like a big theme for both vendors, but also people visiting the show last week. And skills is coming up a lot when we speak to customers at the minute in terms of understanding what skills are in the organization, how to deploy content and programs and initiatives which really help fill those skill gaps that people might have. And there's some stats on the screen. I think the Gartner one stands out to me, that 50% of today's workforce are going to need new skills to do their job successfully by 2030, which is kind of scary, including for many of us on this call, right? We all have to constantly evolve and develop new skills in order to do our jobs, perform well, but also attract and retain talent and those types of things. So that's why we're here today and why we should kind of care about talking about skills. And we're joined by Jenny because Jenny was firstly really involved in helping us build out our skills technology here at Thrive, but also as a games developer, skills are constantly evolving in the games industry, more so than a lot of other industries, right? So that's why Jenny's here to share her story about how it's affecting Sumo Digital as well. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And we're going to start with a bit of a poll just to kick things off. So Cassie's going to share that. So think about the skills that make you valuable at work today in your jobs, but how many of them were actually listed on your job description when you applied and then when you got accepted? Really interested to see what everybody thinks on this one. So we'll just wait for some of those results to come in.
At the moment, just to give you an update, we are highest percentage, nearly 50% is less than 50%, near 39%, 50% or more, and 17%, 70% or more.
Wow.
So give it another 2 seconds. Less than 50% is definitely winning. We can end that in about 20 seconds and I'll share the results so that you guys can see.
What would you say yours was, Jenny, out of curiosity?
Definitely less than 50%. Yeah. It's also, because it is, you think, God, when you were employed, 2019 to me, regardless of the pandemic, how much has changed also in learning and just how you evolve within your role and everything that then happens. So kind of like also initially what you're brought in to do evolves as well, as well as the skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even remember what things were listed on job description when I applied. So yeah, it's one of those things, right? And look, the results are in now. So yeah, less than 50% of everybody on this call today are thinking that how many were actually on their job description. So it's not too surprising, I guess. And like, does that seem right? That we're all applying for jobs or we're pushing jobs out as talent and learning leaders to potential candidates. And the skills that are on the job descriptions aren't necessarily the ones that we see when you actually get into the work. So it's very clear that we can't see everything, right? When HR and talent teams are building job descriptions and pushing them out, we can't see everything. We don't understand necessarily all the skills associated to that job. And the main reason for that is because things are emerging so quickly. But also, I think a lot of the time within L&D and HR, we don't have the right tools in our toolkit to measure, analyze, and understand the skills required for jobs. And therefore, how can we possibly make that clear on things like job descriptions as well? So we can't always see everything. And to be honest, we shouldn't necessarily have to as well. But I think the big thing here is that we're not paying enough attention to the skills that are evolving the quickest. So we all kind of, let's say within like sales, we'll always know that the skills that people should have or be working towards. But let's say within sales, things are changing so quickly in terms of the technologies you need to use. Selling over virtual instead of face-to-face, things like that in the pandemic changed. Or Jenny, in your world, I can imagine the technologies that games developers need to use in 2018 to 2022 are radically different. Like, I'm guessing that's changing all the time for you, right?
Changing all the time. I mean, if anybody looks at a credit, just my challenge is to you to go and have a look at like a game that maybe you've got and just watch the credits and just take a look at, like, I don't know if you're like me, I sit at the cinema, right? I'm sad like this. Sit at the end of the cinema and I watch the credits and I go, God, that's a job, and that's a job, and that's a job. Thinking then in terms of the skills that are needed for those jobs as well. So yeah, if you just watch the credits of a film, even of a game, you kind of think of art, but even in art, you'll have environment art. That's very different to technical art. That's very different to character art. That's very different to the concept art. And these, like you say, continue to develop. As of course in games, we're taking people to a place, a magical place that's beyond kind of like your imagination. And those skills also develop within that.
Yeah. So I think that's it for us, right? And how do we pay more attention to the skills that are evolving the quickest? How do we measure those skills? How do we quickly deploy content to help people develop those skills quickly? And we know you can't develop a skill through just watching a video or listening to a podcast. You need to put something back into practice that should demonstrate experience and competency around that. So we'll talk a bit about that a little bit later when we talk about Sumo's story and how they're approaching skills as well. So thanks for your contribution on the poll. That was really helpful. And I think this leads to a big point that employee expectations are radically changing. Back in like 1970s, 80s, etc., it was very normal for people to have a career. They joined one employer and they stay with the same company for 20, 30 years, etc. And obviously that can still happen, but people's careers are changing. People are moving much quicker. It's harder to attract talent, and it's definitely harder to retain talent as organizations. And I think now as organizations, and many of us are in L&D and HR and talent today, so we can have a big impact on that. But the employers who recognize and respond to that shift, that skills are changing, and that we need to evolve to identify those new skills quickly and help people develop those skills, are going to be the people who can attract and retain talent better by building a better experience. Because take it back to your world, Jenny, again, tech's becoming very, very competitive. Skills are emerging all the time. And you need to really help those developers become the best developers they possibly can be. And to do that, you need to obviously help them develop new skills, provide great learning experiences, because otherwise they might think, oh, I could go to X, Y, or Z company and get developed better in certain technologies, which might help increase pay or whatever it might be. So I think employee expectations are definitely changing, and understanding people's skills and their future career paths is going to be so important in the next few years, given that 58% of us need new skills by 2030, as Gartner said. So in summary, we believe that we need to think a lot bigger, and especially when it comes to technology. There's many systems. Thrive's not the only one that has skills ontologies and can measure skills and can apply learning to skills. So we're not the only one, but I think we need to think bigger in terms of how we're measuring skills altogether, and maybe move away from the kind of top-down competency frameworks and models of the past, which are quite old school now. And to be honest, I don't think anybody loves going through kind of an annual appraisal with a competency model. It's kind of past it, it's sell by date now, to a much more agile skills framework. So that leads to what we've recently rebranded here at Thrive as a learning and skills platform, that skills need to be much more agile. We need to quickly understand skills that are emerging in the organization, in different audiences and different departments around the world, and be able to quickly move in terms of creating content against those skills. And because this is all built from the ground up, from a user-generated perspective, we can quickly identify those skills, build learning experiences, and help people develop faster than ever before. So making skills really agile is going to be super important to remain competitive and to really provide those great experiences to your colleagues. So the things here, and Jenny, please jump in here, the things that we believe that you shouldn't worry about is more technology to manage skills and to track skills and all those types of things isn't necessarily the answer. And that sounds a little bit weird coming from a vendor, but the last thing you need is a skills platform where people are doing, more performance management, more reviews, and more tracking of skills. Sometimes you could just build it into the same platform, have one platform that can manage formal learning, self-directed learning, and skills in one single place. You definitely don't need more acronyms thrown at employees. I think we're all sick of acronyms, both in terms of the L&D industry and within our own organization, our own industries. And you don't need more jargon in terms of, there's so many jargon in the talent and HR space that we push at employees. And I don't think that's valuable whatsoever. But what we do really need is much more transparency in terms of what are the skills in the organization and how can I work towards those skills? But also which people internally already have a skill that I want to possess in the future. So for example, if I'm in sales and I want to become X role, I might be able to see that these people have those skills, and perhaps I can connect with them, I could follow them and build relationships with them. So I think that transparency part's going to be critical, as well as clarity on, what skills should I have in my role and what should I be working towards as well. And I guess, Jenny, for you, with your Thrive environment and everything you're building, I guess transparency is quite key, right? Especially as you have studios all around the world and you want to have a really clear understanding of what skills people should have in their jobs, right?
Yeah, it is. I think kind of like it's interesting because going back to your point kind of on competency frameworks, and I know I spoke at Mark when we first started talking about kind of this, we had a healthy debate, let's say, around competency frameworks. And I would say that for us, and this isn't true for every organisation, but for us, actually, competency frameworks are important. And the reason that they are is because it's the base, right? It gives you a framework. But then there needs to be flexibility within that framework for all the things that you're mentioning here. So if I'm to help someone with their career development, actually, I don't need a framework to do that. I just need great coaching questions. I need to understand, where do you see your next move? What are the skills that you're great at? How can you augment those? Where are you sharing those? What's your next move? Let's get that into clear focus. And we can move forward with that. Don't need a competency framework to do that. But for us as an organisation, what it does is it helps to create scope of responsibility and scope of accountability. So kind of if you're thinking about game dev, actually, I can come with very agile skills around my, kind of technical skills, the different engines that I'm able to work in, how I'm able to draw hair in different kind of technologies. That's super, super important. But it's not just the development of those technical skills and those specialist skills, which is it helps us so much with, but it's also, I am also better at contributing to the game if I am a better communicator than when I was kind of just coming out of college or university, when I'm able to develop my influencing skills. But even with those bigger competencies, it's not just the learning content, because the learning content is only going to be 10% of my journey. Absolutely, like you say, it's also how do I start to own my own journey? What are my skills, my development? How do I get hold of that within this ecosystem that Sumo has created that makes it easy for me to then, I can go and speak to someone that I can see has got some great content or seems to know what they're talking about when they're talking about communication. I want to go and understand more about that because I've got this challenge when I'm trying to communicate a feature, I don't quite get it right. How can I find that mentorship without always having to go through my line manager? Mm-hmm. So there's that element. And then also the element of the specialist skills, like you say, is super important to us because we have got lots of different studios that are working on different games. How you work on a AAA game, so that's kind of, your sort of long-term projects, very high-end games, versus something that's in co-development, something that maybe is an indie game, very different skills and people along that journey at different times as well. There is technology that is getting created in those different studios. We have people who are researching different ways and breaking the mold all the time. How do we highlight those? And that isn't just in video games. Yes, it's very particular to that. But when I talk to other people, it is, that's also in financial institutions. Like, how are we now doing this in this new world? This is, it's kind of every people, lots of learning and development people that I speak to, this is a similar thing that's happening across. How do we harness these skills that are kind of going on all around the place rather than continuing to dump them and get down and down and down and down more into the detail of a competency framework? Actually, what we're trying to do is lift it to have a core, and then you add the flexibility that this then helps you to create.
I think that's the key word as well, right? Flexibility. It needs to be flexible, not just for an organization, but also for departments as well. Because let's say how your developers are doing this versus, let's say, your marketing or commercial team, it might be quite different in terms of managing skills and managing how content is shared within those departments as well. So I think flexibility is really, really important to make this a success too. I don't think it can be rigid where it's like set for all companies because it's very different, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, the next slide is all about kind of success as well. So like, what does success look like for forward-thinking organizations? And we've identified 4, and look, there's probably lots more as well. But one is understanding what makes people amazing. So for example, you just had the example there, Jenny, of someone drawing hair in a video game or whatever it might be, right? That's what somebody's brilliant at, but how do we amplify that skill and share that across the organization? So for us, it's all about democratizing what makes people amazing, and sharing that in communities across the platform, to make sure that we're not losing all of that great knowledge that exists in people's heads, so that it can be also developed by other people.
It is, and just kind of like, like we had recently, some people share vehicle handling, right? So get this, when you're in a racing car game, like that's going to be really different when you have a racing car on a track to when you're in between, like a New York, let's say, in a city. Actually, that vehicle handling might be on a skateboard, because if you put it onto a kind of like a Formula One engine, then you'd be stopping at every red light. So all these ways. So I learned so much just as a, out of interest. But what happened from that is someone put that out on Thrive, like, I've got something interesting to talk about. How do you handle all these different vehicles and what might that mean in the game? That creates so much conversation. And now we've got more people that are being upskilled through that. That would never have happened without the platform that we have.
I love that. And that kind of, and like, I know we're talking a lot about skills there, but that does start with a platform which enables you to share kind of micro bite-sized content, right? And share it in the right way. Because before you even started talking about skills, you've been using Thrive for quite a long time. So you've gone down that route of kind of bite-sized content, user-generated content, and driving kind of collaborative learning as well. And I guess it all started with that, right, as a foundation. And this just helps you get there as well.
Absolutely.
And the next point there, we've got viewing success holistically. And I really like this one. We often just measure the skills that we have to do in our jobs. So you might have 5 skills that you're working towards to help you advance in your job at work. But it's about capturing skills that aren't just associated to your job at work. Like, how can skills that people have outside of their core job have a real big impact on your organization as well? And how do we track them? And how do we amplify those skills across the organization? So that's really key, looking at this holistically rather than just quite granular on someone's work-based skills. The bottom left, we've got enabling internal mobility. And this is a really hot topic at the minute. As I mentioned, it's very unlikely that people stay in jobs now for 20, 30 years like we might have done in the past. It's not as predictable. Linear career progression and encouraging people based on their strengths and aspirations is definitely key. And here, we need to be helping people to essentially move sideways, upwards into completely different departments, and not just staying in their lane, right? People might want to be moving onto a specific project internally because they have great skills and could really contribute to that. And I think by measuring skills in the organization and understanding what someone's current level is and the content they've gone through and the experience they've had, and perhaps saying, okay, you're in sales now, but have you thought about customer success, for example? And helping people internally mobilize themselves to not just have to stay in the same path that they've always done. So I think that's really, really critical for successful organizations moving forward. And then the last one there as well is encouraging that work-life balance, which is obviously hard now in a virtual world where we don't have a commute, many of us anymore, and we're always kind of switched on. But like recognizing everybody's skills within certain teams or departments and create that environment of well-being, feeling valued, and a great community of people, rather than just measuring skills in that lens of saying, you're at this level, move to this. Let's kind of have a bit more of a balance and help people move forward in that way too. So they're just some examples of what does success look like for good organizations who are doing this. And for us, again, our vision for skills has always been about being agile. It's about how do we measure those skills that's constantly evolving, but all begins with harnessing the power of the experts internally. So none of this works from a skills perspective if we don't allow knowledge to be easily shared, for people to connect with other experts internally, and then quickly identify new skills that can help fill those gaps from those experts. So it always begins with that democratization of knowledge sharing, connecting with the experts internally, and then building out the skills as well that are emerging across the organizations so that the L&D function can deploy better programs which are much more data-driven and aligned to what the business are looking for. But as I said with Jenny before, it all starts with that kind of the right content strategy, enabling people to connect with people, and then measuring those skills in the organization. So agile skills for us is definitely where it's heading. So back to you, Jenny. I guess maybe if you could just share kind of the journey that you've been on with Thrive, but also in light of the skills and goals functionality that you've recently been working with us on.
Yeah, so kind of like I say, I joined late 2019. In 2020, we then launched with Thrive. So we call it Dojo. So Dojo is for us meaning a special place to master your learning. And really what we were trying to achieve here is that we've grown a lot through organic growth and also through acquisitions. And like you kind of alluded to before, Josh, is that we have lots of different studios working on lots of different projects. And there's a lot within that, you know, they can't always share what project they're working on. There's a lot, you know, a lot of secrecy because we want to, you know, can't talk about what we're doing until the game is released. But we wanted to be able to share the knowledge because we've got some people, like there might only be 5 of them in the whole world that have that skill. It can be so specialized. So how do we harness those skills so that that skill is starting to trickle down, so we have more of that then starts? So for us, it was really finding a way to help people to share their learnings in a incredibly friction-free way. So we actually took it to test before we launched, and it just exploded. Josh, people started to just share their content, and we were like, slow down, this is like the sandbox, like let's wait for the you know, the good stuff to come. So when we did launch, people were already hungry for sharing their language and for sharing their knowledge, but also for learning off others as well. And I think that was a key point, is that it's not just a place where you go to consume, it's also a place where you go to collaborate. It's a place where you go to share as well. And what I love about Thrive is that there is no hurry. You can see there, I mean, you can see when we launched, this is like our launch page. So a lot of it says Jenny Mushwa. It doesn't look like that now. Like it looks like lots of different people contributing, but it doesn't say my title, it doesn't say head of learning and development. It just says who I am. So I come as a human and I connect with other people on a human level. I don't communicate on a hierarchy level. And I think that again is super important, because people start to follow other people. So you have a functionality to follow people, and then you can follow their content. You're doing that based on what they put out there, not because of their position, which I think is a really interesting concept. And it really did you know, speak to our people, that we said, it doesn't matter if you've been in the industry for 25 days or 25 years, we value what you bring and we value what you'll be able to share with others. And we can learn everything from people's different experiences. Mm-hmm. So since then, we didn't do any competition. We didn't do any big bang. We do very 2% of this site is compliance learning. We keep that super low because we said, you know what, we're not going to force anybody to this site. We're going to create great content. We're going to create this ecosystem of sharing. We have a value of assuming good intent, and we're going to keep with that because everybody can share on here. There's no gatekeeper to the content that gets put out there. And that's then created this ecosystem where people are starting to share. People got really excited about that. And as you can see on here, it's not just learning. So it's not kind of, just intricate learnings about how to, make beautiful hair in a game, but it's also things like a quiz for people to just meet other people across the studios. So there's sort of the social element and kind of learning off each other in a very social way and building some connections, which of course, as we all know, relationships help to build connections, help to bridge learning. So all of that actually helps to contribute to the final aim of that. So where now we're getting to with skills, this has been great, but it's been, it's like a mass of content. It's like a Google, right? You go in there and then you need to search for it. Now where we're wanting to get to is for two things. So for us, this sort of, if you like, core competency of, the things that you would expect, like leadership, communication, all the rest of it, helping people to find the content that is relevant to those in those core, but also that they can then add those specialists. So even within my team, even within learning and development, there's a small team currently, we've got different skills in there. You might have two people with the same job title, but actually what you're asking from those people are very different things. Those are, again, different skills. You might be asking one person to be more of a kind of consultancy, coaching, facilitator training. You might be asking someone else to do more kind of like digital learning, marketing, engagement, like just even there, you could have different skills for those individuals. Well, they're going to learn different things off different people. The consultancy coaching, they might have like people in business development that can help them with that. Marketing might have the marketing team that could help them with some of those skills. So that's where we're going to get to with this.
Let's move on to the next slides and we can start to get into some of the more detail about how to actually approach it. And I guess kind of this leads on quite nicely from what you're saying. So like Look, there are competency framework tools, there's skills ontologies, there's formal skills, there's things happening in HR systems. Like, it can be quite messy. Like we said, right, there are benefits to all of these, but we don't think that they all provide the whole picture in today's skills landscape. With those skills changing so much, like we said, and evolving at such a changing pace, we do need this agile skills approach so that we can do these things on the screen. So to scale very quickly, a lot of our customers are rapidly scaling, hiring hundreds and hundreds of people, and need to scale at speed. So in a traditional sense, this is quite hard to do, but when it's user generated, built from the ground up, you can deploy this at pace, right? So that's going to be critical, and leading to that will obviously save time. And I think as well, it'll involve more than L&D. And I think L&D, we've been known for quite some time that L&D needs to move away from being order takers to kind of creating business value. And when we're really aligned in terms of the skills that are required to make the business a success, make the business more competitive, attract talent and those types of things, it becomes an initiative much, much wider than just learning and development. We need stakeholders from the business, we need C-level exec support to really understand how we actually grow this across the organization in every single department. And I really like that by having an agile skills framework now, it becomes more than just an L&D initiative. It's a business initiative that requires support from every exec of every major department. And lastly, it takes away the guesswork, right? If we have some skills data, which I'm going to show you in a bit, around how skills are emerging across the organization in different departments and different audiences, it really takes the guesswork out from an L&D perspective. Because traditionally, you might get some of this data on an annual basis, or something gets shot out from your HR system after appraisals and reviews and those types of things. But now when we have live data coming from end users' input to the platform, the learning that they've done, and the knowledge that they've shared, we can really understand what's happening from a skills perspective across the organization. So I'll show you some dashboards soon, which help bring this to life to take away that guesswork. And if we think about how this is going to make organizations more agile, there's so many different benefits to this. There's some on the screen here. I guess some of the best examples that I've seen across some of our customers, outside of the examples that Jenny shared there, which were also great, are some of our retail customers. So we've got retailers like Ted Baker and Fatface and Dunelm and Matalan and many others. But Ted Baker have been really interesting because they've really identified the knowledge experts within certain stores, bottled all that greatness of knowledge, and identified the skills that those individuals have that make them successful. And with all that kind of great knowledge that those experts have, we can understand what skill level they are through diagnostics, and then start to share those skills across the organization so that other people across the Ted Baker stores around the world can learn from those experts, but also develop the skills like them. And we also had examples during the lockdown where Sky were selling broadband, and they were identifying the skill levels of individuals. And then again, finding the knowledge which was helping people advance quicker to the next skill so they could become a Sky legend at selling broadband and TV packages. So for us, there's so many benefits of making it agile. There's some examples on the screen of how people are doing that. But again, it always comes back to that example of finding the experts, understanding the knowledge that they're sharing, and then starting to build those skills matrix across the organization and just watch it grow from there. Like Jenny, that example you had then about people collaborating around the games is literally the perfect example for this, right? How agile it can actually be when it's done in real time.
Yeah,
which is really important. Anything more to add there, Jenny, on this slide that we might have missed?
No, I think, kind of like you're saying, I think before Sumo, I worked at Wilko, and kind of going into one of the stores, at Wilko, they sell things, obviously kind of have products that come in from suppliers, but also they design their own products. And so when I was on a store visit one time, I was talking to one of them, and they're like, I'm not really sure what this new product does. And there was someone in the store that was just like, if there was like an unboxing, like if we had a platform where you could like unbox it and we could have some fun with it and da-da-da. So that's a really cool idea. In the store, they just started to do that, right? And they just had, and this was before these kind of things, so they did it on like a WhatsApp group or the rest of it. It was another skill that then within the team, they were able to do that. They were able to have some fun with it. Like, this is how you could do it. But that whole unboxing thing meant that people then really understood the product, that it was done in a really engaging way. It was done kind of through the people. And it's stuff like that I think can really help to lift, within retail as well.
Definitely. Yeah, retail's a really good example for it, right? There's so many ways in which it can be used. I think it's perfect. Cool. So on to the next one. So some final tips before we just get into some of the platform stuff to get started on your own kind of agile skills strategy. Number one, and a lot of this is always the case, I think in L&D especially, is about challenging the mindset and educating stakeholders that there is a different way to do this. Like historically, how skills might have been created and tracked and measured across the organization can be done in so many different ways. But by having it built from the user ground up rather than top down, it just has such much more agility to track these new emerging skills that are happening. Really, really, really focusing on the learners. I know you do this, Jenny. I think going back to the start of when you launched Thrive, you always got end learners involved in the solution, the design and the scoping of it as well. And I think having the emphasis on the learners in terms of what do you need to succeed and what does success look like to you? Like, how would you want to use this? Asking those questions and putting the onus back on them. I think too many times kind of L&D and HR can design a solution with sometimes not actually asking the end learner, like what they actually need to do their jobs. So I think that's absolutely critical. Looking at the holistic needs of the learners and how do you actually support them, not just as workers, but as people and humans. It's not all about just developing their work skills. They can also develop much broader skills, which in turn is going to help them longer term. So that's definitely critical as well. And then finally is build a network and find the experts, like finding those kind of knowledge experts, extracting all of that amazing tacit knowledge from them and bottling it into kind of 2 or 3 minute bite-sized videos and allowing people to connect with that knowledge and allow them to connect with them as well is really, really important to deploying an agile skill strategy. Without that, all that's going to be is just lots of content from L&D or third-party content providers that you've purchased, which is great, but you also need that really authentic content from the experts internally to drive this all forward. So there's just some of the main tips to get started. Jenny, have you got anything to add there? I'm sure you've got a few more to add.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that one of the biggest things is that listening. So it is kind of, obviously Thrive is great because you're able to then start identifying the skills through the platform that's going to give you the data. But if you don't have that, how do you start doing it? And one of the things I just say, as much as possible, is just get out there in the business and listen. If it's a retail, getting out into the stores and just hearing what's going on the shop floor. If it's a financial institution, get to those regional meetings and just hear the challenges kind of that are going on around the table. It's going to tell you so much about the skills that are actually needed at that point in time.
I love that. I think there's some good points there. So everything from the mindset, getting started, the experts, the content, there's so many ways you can get started on this. But let's move to some of the platform stuff and kind of bring this to life a little bit. So in terms of how Thrive are enabling this, we've recently launched our skills functionality, which we built with lots of amazing customers, including Jenny. And there's a few kind of key parts to it. So one is smart skills progression. So this is for us about using the data to connect the right people to the right learning opportunities. We'll do this through a combination of diagnostics, through understanding someone's job role today, through integrations with HR systems and identity management providers, but by really understanding someone's current skill level and then connecting them to the right learning opportunities, which is going to help them advance that skill, is critical. And learning will be recommended based on formal learning they need to do within the platform, external partners, so people like Udemy that Jenny uses, LinkedIn Learning, Go1, etc., and our own content really then matches people to the right learning opportunity that they're working towards to help them progress that skill. So that's absolutely critical. 2 is goals. So it's fine working towards a skill. It's absolutely fine working towards a skill of, let's say, leadership, but without a goal attached to it, it doesn't have much purpose or meaning. So within Thrive now, we've built goals, which are completely customizable. They can be set by managers or coaches within the platform to allow individuals to work towards specific goals. And that might be completing some learning online. It might be some offline learning experience. It might be connecting with a mentor or a coach as well. And that can then be managed and reflected on with managers and coaches in review sessions and OKRs and all those types of things as well. So goals is critical. It doesn't matter if you're working towards a skill if there's no goal that you can measure it from, right? So setting goals and objectives is a big part of the platform. Number 3, you've got analytics. So this is critical to help you kind of spot emerging skills and to understand what gaps you need to fill from an L&D perspective. So if I just move out of here very quickly, and I just go into this dashboard here, We're doing lots of work. We've got kind of tracking within the platform to understand people's skills and how much content is attached to those skills. And that's kind of standard functionality. And then we've also got these much more custom dashboards where we're tracking skill engagement across locations. So for example, at Sumo, they've got studios everywhere, haven't you, Jenny? You've got Leeds, Brighton, India, it's everywhere. So it's about tracking the skills that are emerging and performing across the organization. You've got skill by level, so you can really start to understand what skills are people doing very well at in the organization in terms of the learning they've completed, the goals they've completed against that skill, but perhaps which are lacking in the organization. And as a result, what learning opportunities do we need to provide, or what content do we need to build or curate in order to help raise those skill levels across the organization? All the way through to tracking it on activity basis, month on month, year on year, tracking what skills are emerging, what skills are trending in the organization, so that you can really put this into practice and measure what's happening. And this is going to be critical, the analytics, to actually tracking those emerging skills that we spoke about at the beginning. You know, with that 58% of skills changing in the next kind of 7 or 8 years, we need to be, whoops, I clicked the wrong button. We need to track the right skills, and analytics is definitely going to help you do that. And then hopefully provide the learning content to go with it too. And one part I really love about our new release is the profile page. So every individual has a profile. You can track your skills, the learning you've done, the people you've connected with, and the knowledge you've shared. And something that we can do then is then give recognition and kudos to people once they've demonstrated that skill, perhaps at work or in a conversation or in some practice session or whatever it might be. So recognition and giving the kudos to experts internally is absolutely critical. But then aligned to that, going back to Jenny's point earlier, finding the experts internally, doing a quick search, finding someone with a skill that you're really looking to develop yourself, is it really going to help connect people to great content, but also connect people to great experts internally, which in turn should help progress skills across the organization. So there's just a few kind of parts of kind of our new kind of learning and skills release, everything from tracking the skills and matching people to the right opportunities, to the analytics and to the goals as well. And we've recently kind of rebranded. We've dropped the LXP term here at Thrive. We've kind of got a bit sick of that. I think the industry have as well. So now we are a learning and skills platform. And ultimately what that means is we combine the best of a traditional LMS with a super personalized learning experience. But we have all of that skills functionality as well. And what that means for organizations like Sumo now is that you have one platform holistically for everything. You don't need to go and buy an LMS, an LXP, a skills platform, which a lot of organizations do, which can definitely confuse employees. You can just have one all-in-one platform to manage learning and skills across the organization. So any questions? I'll just check with Cassie to see if there's any questions, because I can't really see my chat box on this one monitor. And if there aren't any questions, we'll wrap up there. But hopefully that was really beneficial to you all to hear from Jenny and how we're approaching skills here at Thrive.
Thank you so much. That was really great. I've got a question here for Jenny, which talks more about practical side of things. So someone asks, have you got any tips on rolling out agile skills within their business?
So yeah, I would say in terms of kind of, like I say, if you've got, obviously if you have a platform like Thrive, then it does become easier. Do need to kind of caveat that. But in other ways, then, like I say, when I talk to a lot of L&D colleagues, they've talked a lot around how competency frameworks and skills mapping are getting far more complicated because there's far more detail. So what I would say to begin with is really try to helicopter out kind of like how much can you go up and up and up to then have it that you're not bogging yourself down within the detail. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing from that is then creating kind of awareness where you can go and listen to those skills so that you can start to understand that. But my main thing that I kind of really feel quite passionately about is that L&D professionals, we're not here to hold the content. We're not here to hold all the skills and all the knowledge in there. We're here to create an ecosystem and a culture that allows for learning to take place. So I know this is like more about the learning, but for example, our unconscious bias, we have some unconscious bias training, but actually we asked our people to share the resources that they felt were important. I only know so much. from my own world of, experiences and all the rest of it, so much richer content came from our people. And I think that's the thing, it's creating that environment and that cultural shift that allows for that to happen. And then once you have that, then actually when you are starting in terms of kind of really listening to people, understanding the skills that are emerging, you've already got this ecosystem that is allowing more of that collaboration to take place.
Awesome, thank you. And there's a couple of questions here in the Q&A box, which I think you could probably have a bit of a dual approach on. So someone's asking to show a little bit more of the analytics and reporting. And then someone else has asked how agile skills is different to traditional competencies. So I wondered, Josh, if you want to take the first one and talk a little bit about the analytics. And then Jenny, you want to take the second one, and I know you mentioned it earlier, but potentially talk about kind of what the main difference is for you.
You're on mute, Josh.
Classic. Yeah, it starts at a few levels. So one, you've got behavior measurements. You can understand the time at which people are using the platform, which in turn helps you build amazing campaigns, scheduling content at the right time to the right people. That could be around a specific skill in itself. So that can really help be much more data driven in terms of how you're deploying content. Then you've got kind of content analytics as well, which I won't go into, but I think these ones around skills are definitely the most impressive in terms of tracking skills by activity, by the audience as well. So you can actually look at skills achieved and gained in different job departments across the organization and see how they're competing, if you like. I think the location piece is brilliant, especially for global organizations. You can then really understand a global heat map of skill engagement in terms of, does the US function within tech need more of a focus on X, Y, and Z skill? If so, why? And then if they do, then what can we deploy very quickly to make them achieve that? And then we've got these skill engagement metrics here, these dashboards. So on the right, you can see the top 5 skills by user count, and then the top 5 job titles by user count as well. So you can really start to understand those trending skills across the organization versus the ones that might need a little bit more attention as well. So there's lots that we can share after this session if you want to kind of jump on a call and get into more of the detail. But you've got everything from behavioral review of skills in terms of the time, all the way through to more custom dashboards where you can track this on a global level, department level, individual level, and just look at general skills that are emerging and trending in the organization. I think the second half of that question was to you, Jenny, but I forgot.
Yeah, so I think in terms of, if we think about that from an L&D perspective, right? So kind of like what hopefully everyone on the call will recognize in some form is, if we think about even, what would be some of the core competencies that we would see in an L&D function? Well, they would be to, really understand what is the problem that we're trying to solve. It would be around, creating maybe workshops that help to engage and help to bring out the skills in people. So there's some things that we would say, yeah, these are the things that we say. You could probably even go to the CIPD and they would say, like, these are the core things that you should be able to do kind of within, and then we'll even give you a qualification if you hit these core things. But then within that core framework, does it also say, actually, also what you're going to need to do is you're going to be able to have to deliver virtually. Also, what you're going to need to be able to do is to be able to deliver in a hybrid way. So some people sitting in the room and some people on a screen. Also, what you're now going to be able to have to do is figure out a way, whereas before you would have, post-it notes all over the place, you're now going to have to figure out a way how to engage people digitally, to share and collaborate. You're now going to have to think about how you now report so that your, so that your business really understand what you're driving after and the changes that you're making. Maybe not, particularly those last ones in terms of the things that we've had to adapt and change. They're not now going away, but they're probably not in a core framework on the CIPD website. But they probably will be. Like, this is like, it's one of those, this is what we're saying, like, this is the kind of, that we need up here, but this is the stuff that's kind of emerging until we go, yep, that's now kind of within this core framework. But maybe these things aren't needed anymore because we continue to emerge. And our skills, this isn't going away, our skills continue to emerge. Otherwise, we'd still be running around with spears and trying to get, try to get our food. We don't do that anymore because our skills have emerged, and so they'll continue to emerge. So that's what I see it as. Core is kind of, like I say, even within the L&D, that would be, right, this is what kind of we all agree as an industry, but also here are the things that keep on emerging, that keep on kind of coming through, that we start to say, actually, those are like the influencers, those are the people that I'm kind of driving after. What is it that they're doing? What is it that they're challenging on? Where are they pushing the boundaries? I want to learn off that. That becomes part of your skill set.
Yep, love that.
Thank you, Jenny. And this is quite a nice follow-on question, actually. Someone's asked, how are you planning on being more reactive with more transparency on skills development? Sorry, that's the wrong question. How are you planning on managing time and resource to be more reactive to trending skills? Similar question, but I think that's a really interesting one on the practical side of things. So you talked a lot about emerging skills, right, and trending skills. How then do you as an L&D team plan on managing that time and resource to be able to compete with different priorities or different campaigns that you might be running at the time?
It's a really, really good question. If anyone wants to give me some coaching on that, appreciate that. If there's anyone out there that fancies practicing their coaching skills on that. So it is a real challenge. And I think it is one of these, like I was saying before, some of this isn't for us to create the content of, it's creating the right environment for other people to be able to share it or mentor others or, have conversations with others or work on projects with others and learn off them. So partly it's not actually then the time within that. But as those start to emerge, there then becomes a need and you start to see that need. And sometimes I've before bought it in to start with because it's a short term, how long is this going to go for? I'll buy it in at a cost until it gets to a point where you're like, actually, this is now something that is long lasting. Going to need to start investing more in actually something more permanent. But there may be people here that have got, other ways that they've done it in the past.
That was a good question.
Love it. Love that question. I think, unless there's any more final questions that come in, I think that's it for audience questions today.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome. So I think you could probably wrap up now, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for everybody's time. Jenny, thanks as always. Really interesting to hear your story and what you're doing. It's really interesting to hear, especially around how you're making it better for games developers, especially to kind of develop their skills inside and outside of those core job roles. I think that's really interesting for people. We'll share the recording with everybody if you want to share it with your teams. And if you've got any more questions for myself or Jenny, our emails and those types of things, I think will be shared out afterwards with the recording. And yeah, we'll go from there. But have a good day, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks everyone.
Jenny.
And thank you
See
so
you
much,
soon.
Jenny, for joining us today.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.